cigar shop. He still has the best cigar in the United States.
Okay, edit that out. Hopefully have a better intro then. Okay. All right, let's start over. Okay, so welcome back to Kendall Projects. This is season 2. We're revisiting the initial version of Exposed by the Wife. Faith seemed to enjoy that role. And so I have no idea what the questions are going to be this year. And for this podcast particularly, we'll see how it goes. So bear with me as I take my time to answer these questions somewhat...
Honestly.
Well, honestly, yes, but carefully worded. So, all right. So, Faith, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Okay. All right. So, what a difference a year makes, huh?
Okay.
So I'm gonna list some of the things that we've done.
Okay.
In a year.
All right.
Kendall Projects website is up and running with purchasing options. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. You've had 2 shows.
Yeah. 2 solo shows.
2 solo shows. A tremendously large one at 701 Contemporary Fine Arts Center. That's what I said. Oh, no fine arts. The last solo show at Anastasia and Friends, the second to last show ever before they close their doors.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Yes, unfortunately.
Interview on television. Interview on the radio. Panel discussion with professional doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists around South Carolina with the topic of football and head injuries.
Mm-hmm.
The Buhag Film, Jodan's Film Festival in Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
Several auctions of your drawings during the last holiday season. Multiple prints and original pieces sold through your website.
Mm-hmm.
T-shirt line, Open Studios. We were in Open Studios. You've had a series of podcasts with professional artists and musicians across South Carolina and Georgia.
That's correct.
You started a series of blog posts regarding your own work. We've had an article spread in the Free Times and the State Paper. We have hired a part-time social media assistant. That would be me. I'm working pro bono right now. Actually, I'm working for the breakfast and the dinner you make every night for me.
That's right.
That's a lot for any business, much less Kendall Projects. Not to mention, personally, you've gotten back on the bike. You've gotten back in the water. You've done a race again. You've lost about, 80 pounds?
I'm guessing. I'm still not willing to get on the scale yet. I know that clothes that I haven't worn for over 8 years I wear now, and wearing clothes that are, how do you say it? It's probably like the shorts I have on right now are 20 years old. So.
So out of all these things that I listed, what was the most fun for you?
I don't, that's a really tough question to answer, because I don't know if, I think it becomes fun by default. You know me as well enough to know that I never want it to be easy. Mm-hmm. So I seek out the challenge of it, and I think that when it's hard, it becomes fun. It's never fun when it's easy. And maybe I need to distinguish the idea between the ideas between being. There's a certain amount of enjoyment when I do these things, and fun and enjoyment not necessarily the same thing. Mm-hmm. Fun is much more like an escape or a distraction. And I'm not looking for a distraction. I'm looking to move forward somehow.
What are you most proud of, and why?
I didn't answer the first question yet, so just chill. I just relax. So you want me to answer what I thought was fun or enjoyment?
Either one.
I don't know the answer to that.
This is the first question, and you're sweating already.
It's hot in here now. It's supposed to be cool.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
All right. Yeah, I can't answer that right
Okay,
now.
what are you most proud of in the work that you've done this year? There's so many new things. I mean, I'm looking at the studio right now, and we've got so much work up here that's just this year.
Yeah, I think what I'm proud of, there's a couple things. The head trauma show at 701, I'm very proud of that because it was 16 years worth of work that finally got a chance to like exist in the same space, and I was very proud of that show and how it came together, and seeing work that I haven't seen in 16 years or around that time. Some of that work had been boxed up and crated up. That's one. And then the Anastasia and Friends show I was proud of that because I was taking a leap out with the work that I haven't. I was putting myself in a place creatively that I haven't ever been, and even the work that I'm developing now and the body of work that I'm working on now is a direct reflection of that experiment. And so yeah, like taking a chance on your own work and putting a show together that probably would not be accepted as well as maybe some of my other work had, because it was difficult to digest for the audience, but that was kind of the point of the exercise. So the two solo shows I'm probably most proud of, other than getting myself together physically and emotionally and mentally, aside from that.
So that kind of goes perfectly into my next question because I wanted to talk about Anastasia and Friends, that show. Okay. For me, just as the wife and just watching it, I love to step back and I loved watching the people as they came in, because it was like their initial, almost everyone that walked in, they stopped and they like froze and they were entranced by what was happening. And they would walk around and question, and they're like, I mean, I think one couple was like, this is just odd. And one couple said, this is like a fun house of sorts. So what are your thoughts? Yeah, what are your thoughts about
that? I think that's a great, I mean, I in my artist statement, I always talk about the work as if you happen upon a crime scene. I think with this particular show, that was probably a little bit more...
circusy?
Yeah, well, no, I don't know. I think with this particular show, it was a little bit more blatantly like that, like much more like going in it. It was much more deliberate when I was choosing it, and also the work itself. Speaking of circusy, the Funhouse thing, and I've talked about this in previous vlogs. If you're following a vlog, my vlogs on YouTube or on any of the platforms they're on. We went to Disney this time last year, and that experience going there informed that work. So I think that response from the audience was probably spot on, because we had strobe lights and mm-hmm. the colors were spectacular. Mm-hmm. The imagery was graphic in nature. It was loud without being loud. Mm-hmm. And that sound, it wasn't sound wise loud, but visually it was loud. So yeah, I think I love that. We've talked about this before, but it's when you're an artist, and especially for myself, it's really, I really wish no one ever saw me. They only saw the work, and I could be invisible and experience it like that.
But people want to see, like, who is the person that, like, created all of this? A lot of people, their favorite piece for that show was the drummer piece.
Yeah.
And so many people would just walk straight to that. And I heard so many people say, God, if I had however much, I don't even know how much we put it up for, I would totally buy that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was one of my favorite pieces too. It was for a lot of different reasons because I was trying some different things with materials and imagery, and we'll put this up too for those of you that are not just listening on the iTunes or SoundCloud. We'll be putting an image with the video and let you see this piece if you haven't. Yeah, I think it was great. It's unfortunate that it doesn't have a life after that, though. You know, that's something that.
Right.
I mean, you have to price it according to its worth and the time you put into it, and I think that's probably ultimately all it was. The price, it was just strictly materials and time.
But if somebody saw this work on this podcast and saw this drummer piece and they said, I've got to have that, but I only have this much money.
I mean, that's just a conversation that you have in private.
Have that conversation with me, not him.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's move on then to the 701 show. Just talking about that one. It's just really intriguing that whole show was about head trauma and injuries, and we just finished watching, not you, I did, just finished getting my nerves tore up watching the Gamecocks beat the Bulldogs in double overtime. And that whole conversation with this particular piece of, or this whole show was that exactly. Like, you're never going to stop people from watching football because of what I just experienced in 10 minutes. And there was so much press about it. There was a lot of people who kept coming in and just looking at it and saying, this work is so important. My son has CTE. My cousin has. My dad had. Whatever. And we actually had the opportunity to meet Monet Bartel, who's the daughter of Mel Farr from the Detroit Lions. He actually, they donated his body to science because they discovered he had CTE. And her response to your work was something that was unheard of for you. Talk about that.
Before that,
it's a loaded question.
Yeah, before that, we'll just go to the panel discussion. The panel discussion was pretty magical experience for myself. It was a great conversation, and looking back on it, my opinions and my point of view on the subject of football is constantly evolving for a lot of different reasons. So the panel discussion was an ability for me to hear other people's opinions on the subject and hear the public's opinion on my work with the subject matter. And I think I have now a very raw, honest perspective on football, American football. So that's one thing. Okay, so when we left the panel discussion, you're on this high, and you feel like you've made a point, and people are engaged, and etc. And then out of the blue, you get called into the gallery because somebody wants to meet you and see the work because they're from out of town, and their dad was a professional football player, and their brothers, so you don't want to miss that opportunity. So I met Monet at the gallery, and she spent about an hour in the gallery, and then we had a discussion, and it was really tough. It affected me in a way that I didn't know how to handle it. I still don't know what to quite do with it. I think it affected me for about a week. When somebody goes in and sees the work, and the work itself is very tongue-in-cheek and comical. When I was making it, it's almost cartoonish, but to have someone break down and cry in front of you and tell you this is an exact representation of their dad's life and their brother's life and what had ruined their family ultimately was really hard to digest. I mean, the issues are like that. The issues that I'm dealing with are life and death. And yeah, the term head trauma had to do with the idea of possibly having some kind of brain injury, sure. But it's also head trauma, as in like I was like a head trip. Like you when you're a participant in that, you become inundated and I don't want to say inundated or brainwashed, even the right term to use. And you lose focus of what's important in your life. So the work that I was talking about, it had to do with much more of an emotional trauma too. That's in your head, not exactly the physical banging your head and having some kind of brain injury. So I think the combination of the idea of the physical danger of it and then the mental and emotional danger of participating in the sport it wasn't able to allow the work to transcend and affect people on a much broader level. I mean, Monet's the piece that she responded to the most were the dolls that were gyrating on the floor that were kind of splayed out and open, but they were done in such a comic book way that wasn't quite as graphic as the headpiece. It looks like literally like my head has been ripped off my shoulders and it's blood and guts and it's very visceral and real. And then right down the floor, there's this other cartoony thing made out of fabric that's it looks like a cartoon.
Right.
So it was and then meeting with Monet and then having that experience, having somebody have such an emotional response to the work, I hadn't quite had that. Back to your original point about the Anastasia and Friends, people seeing it as a fun house, that's kind of my intent. I expect that reaction. Her reaction was not expected at all, and it really screwed with my head. And I'm still not sure how I feel about it. It's almost making me gun shy to show the work again.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and to be completely respectful to and I honestly can't remember the family's names, but isn't it a Gamecock that one of the players now had a brother that just recently died from CTE, and he's back to playing football again, and he understands the risks that are coming with the last name starts with an H.
Holinsky.
Okay, right.
Yeah, the Helinskys. This is the quarterback for the Gamecocks right now.
So it's almost like people know.
Well,
they know.
Well, now they're starting to know. That's one of the issues that I have with football. I mean, when I was coming up and got inundated by the culture, for a lot of different reasons, how it was sold to me was that the violent nature of it was this kind of romantic, almost war-like thing. And so you had NFL films that put out these videos you watch on VHS, right. Crunch Course, and I remember one of the videos they were talking about. They created a sequence that showed you what the meaning of courage was, and the meaning of courage is, being scared and going anyway. So, and these guys are just slamming into each other. And so that was, and now as all the data has come out and all the literature has come out, the NFL ultimately knew that this was dangerous years ago. I mean, as early as 1993, which was I was a senior in high school, that brain injuries were happening, and then it wasn't a safe sport. So back to your point is people know, and that was one of the things I brought out in the panel discussion. I think if they're obscenely honest with kids now, and I think I think the sport is starting to be whether they want to or not, obscenely honest that it's super dangerous, and if they make the rules or make it even more dangerous, it might curtail participation and change the numbers for the injuries and the brain problems and everything else to lessen, simply because there are less people participating. But I don't think it's ever going to stop people from participating, like the
Right.
Helensky kid. I think when you know, it's very much like it's a militaristic exercise, the sport itself, and it's different from any other sport, especially when you put on a helmet and these shoulder pads. It's very much like, a helmet and flat jacket and stuff. Someone going into war, so it's a simulation of sorts. So, I think that this kid Helensky, as much as I think might be a little bit misguided for a lot of different reasons, that his brother died and he's going to prove a point and whatever. But at least he knows that, and I can accept that.
Right.
I don't. Do you know?
Like, he's not going into it blindly. He knows he's going in. He has the support from his family, and he's going to play for his brother.
Right. I mean, if you go in there and say, "Oh
name.
no, it is safe. It is safe. I'm going to be just fine. It is safe. It is safe." You're saying that to yourself, then you're lying to yourself. And if the schools and the programs are saying it's safe, they're lying. And I think if they're saying
all schools, all programs,
like from pros to college to high school and
little league,
I think that's going to eventually start. That's going to change. I mean, I think the lawsuits will change that in the next 10 years. Though, when you have a kid that doesn't even make it to high school because he has CTE, I think that's what you're going to start seeing, and where they're having to. These Pop Warner people just can't afford the insurance to operate. So I think that it's a constantly morphing monster. And the NFL, I don't watch it. I generally don't watch football at all. I do watch Carolina lose.
Not today.
Well, not today. That's true. That is very true. I generally watch Carolina lose and occasionally win, but I don't watch. And occasionally, my brother's a high school coach, so I guess I once in a blue moon I'll go see a high school game. But I don't watch pro games because that's the epitome of the lie. They're going to make it safe because of all these rule changes, but you just can't make it safe. And I think if they change the rules the way it used to be back in old school and make it it's uber violent, uber like gladiator violent, I might be tempted to watch it a little more.
So that makes me go to an idea that, when you had your artist talk for that show at the opening, I feel like this needs to be higher.
It might be sliding too. Just keep tightening the end over there.
There were several people we had never seen before, which was very interesting. There were some family and friends, and then fans of the work, and then there were a handful of people that were just new. And there was this one couple that kept talking to you about almost like being a crusader for or against football, and they wanted you to go talk to football teams, and why don't you go talk to the Gamecocks? And you were kind of like, that's not my point. I'm not saying don't play football. I'm just saying know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, I'm by. I think even there was a comment on social media.
Oh right, I forgot about that.
About that, I'm not being a crusader. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just holding the mirror up. You know what I'm saying? I'm just holding the mirror up. I think that's what artists are supposed to do. They're supposed to have our... Yeah, that's what artists do. We have the curse of clarity.
That I think that kind of goes with holding the mirror up. You do that a lot, and I think that's why you make people uncomfortable, because you do it with little expression on your face in a very stoic conversation or comment. And we talked about this in the last one, but it kind of goes back to without disrespect towards my dad, that series that you did on the things that keep people from being healthy and exercising. And there was that one where the morbidly obese demon was behind, and my dad reacted to that. And I think it was because you put the mirror up, not for him specifically, but people will pull from your work what affects them.
Yeah, and it's coming from a very personal place. When I was in art school, I was lucky enough to have mentors and professors and people that shaped my practice, that basically said you can't make work or you can't tell the story that you haven't experienced yourself. And I think that's what I do for myself every day, is this idea of holding yourself responsible for whatever. And I think teaching forced me to lose sight of that. You become numb, and I mean, ultimately, I was sick. I think a lot of teachers get sick.
I agree.
And I think anybody, even like a corporate job, and anybody who's doing something they don't love or they're stuck or whatever, they lose sight of themselves. And even during when I was making this work, that a lot of the work I was still making when I was teaching, so it was a way of me kind of looking at myself critically. Looking at myself critically. And I think it's hard for us to do as people, to be honest with yourselves first and get your act together and realize that all you can control is what's in your own universe.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, I struggle with that on a daily basis.
I think we all do.
Circle of control.
I think we all do. I think because of mass media and social media, and everybody wants to manipulate us and seduce us and all that. I think it's really hard for us to look at each other. Well, first of all, I think it's not each other. It's extremely difficult for you to look at yourself honestly and then react honestly. I think it's nearly impossible to do that.
Right. So many people, when they're encountered with something that either they don't like or it affects them because they see that in themselves, they want to immediately react.
Well, I don't even know.
And blame somebody else.
Well, maybe.
Well, you made me feel that way.
Well, maybe. I think we're in a position, a place in society right now. I heard on a podcast, it was Kevin Hart talking, and he was like,
I love Kevin Hart.
And he was talking about like people like in this outrage culture, and people that are just there's people that are just haters, and it's like you and I could be having this conversation about how great pizza is. Say, man, that pizza. Remember that pizza, man? That pizza was great. And you got somebody, man, pizza's horrible. Pizza sucks. And you're like, hey, man, have you ever had pizza? No, man, I had never had pizza.
Right.
And you're like, well, how do you know if it sucks? It just sucks, man. It just sucks. People that eat pizza, they suck. They suck. I think there are people that are just like that. I think people that are just so dissatisfied with their existence in the universe that they're are going to constantly hate on anybody that finds any positivity in their experience as a human being. I think that's where we're at right now. And it's kind of like, whatever, man, I'm past that. But I am aware of that. And it's so blatant in anything that we consume these days. I mean, I have referred, my friend Zach, we've talked recently, we're talking about Yahoo's news feed. It's just a dumpster fire. It's just a dumpster fire of haters. It's just people that get paid for a living to create hate.
Some of those those captions in the beginning, it's like, anyway, let's
we digressed.
We digress. Let's move on. Okay, so one of my favorite things that we did this year, I mean, I have to be perfectly honest with you, it was so much fun, like sitting in the green room and watching you on that short segment and on the 12 o'clock news at NBC. Thank you, NBC, for allowing us that opportunity. I reached out to...
Speaking of mass media?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I reached out to all of the local news stations, and they were the only one that called me back. And I think my favorite part was having our girls in the background and watching and seeing the weather. And Leola had been on Wing TV, so she's the short, smaller version of what she saw. And that was just fun to participate with the girls. But probably one of my favorite was driving up to Charlotte for the Joe Dance Film Festival. It was very professionally done. We had step and repeat and free food and VIP passes, and got to meet Vanna White's brother and
Chip White. Shout out Chip White, yep. Great guy, great event. Diane too, they made the film festival for adolescent leukemia. They put it on the film festival and has grown, and this is one of the first year they've actually in a full venue, and it's very professionally done. The films were impressive. I realized too that my my skills as a filmmaker are lacking, and if I want to continue to do that, but I'll have to get better. But the film festival itself made me want to make a film specifically for that festival again. So
Yeah.
it was good. It was good times. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would totally go back to that one. That was a lot of fun. It was a good time. One of our mini Friday night conversations I shared in our last podcast that we go through the week. You work, I work, and then the girls get to go to Grandma's house on Friday nights and hang out with Grandma and Aunt Wanda, and that gives us our opportunity to keep our marriage going by just hanging out and talking.
Yeah. I think that's for anybody that's married that like each other. I think that's
We still like each other.
no. That's my thing. I mean, my current boss, Heath Edwards, who owns and is the head coach at Palmetto Aquatics, we talk about this all the time. It's like marriage is incredibly difficult, even if you like each other.
Right.
And I'm not talking love. Love is different than like.
Yeah, you can love somebody and.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. Like the Friday nights are definitely a way of decompressing. Yeah.
But thinking about the conversation we had at one point, and clearly this was before school started because I wouldn't have been that intellectually able to talk to you. But you talked a lot about some of your mentors, your artist mentors like Paul McCarthy and Matthew Barney.
They're not mentors; they're influences.
Influences, yeah.
I don't
Sorry,
know them
not
personally.
mentors. Yeah, exactly. And we talked about how they don't make work to sell. They make work to tell a story, or at least they started out that way.
Yeah, I mean, they had the luxury of being in the right place at the right time in history and having people that could financially back them to do these things that are experimental, kind of like the Anastasia Friend show. Yes. So, yeah.
So I say, in my eyes, there seem to be two types of artists. One that makes work to sell, and one that tells a story. Why the latter for you?
Well, I think that artists that make work to sell, they still can tell a story. But the kind of story they tell is dictated by the idea of selling something. You and I have had several conversations about this, especially since now that you've kind of taken over this kind of financial role and selling, and even at shows and being a salesperson for the work. Which I am not comfortable with at all. At all.
That's why I took it over.
Well, I know. So let me finish. But now you broke my train of thought. So you have two types of people. People that sell it and somebody's trying to get to the bottom of something. Although I could do that, paint landscapes and portraits and whatnot, but it doesn't fulfill my soul. That's the best way I could kind of explain it. It just becomes like a monotony job, and I am not interested in that. Not only am I not interested, that's what robs me of my motivation. Mm-hmm. Like my brain is so complex, and how my ideas come about are so complex, and it generally never stops. So I can't reconcile the selling and the making. I just can't. I don't know how to do it.
And you seem to, when for whatever reason, when you are forced to make work that you are to sell, it's like you freeze, like you it stresses you out.
I hesitate for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that was really great about doing the events at the cigar shop. The first event, I was just basically, we were raffling off an existing work that related to cigar lovers. And then the second one, I made this very specific drawing that related to cigar lovers, but also dealt with what I was was like an illustration of what I was going through in my life. And then it had to do with some kind of love of story and music. So The Gambler, for those of you that know the Kenny Rogers song, it was just kind of like a direct response to those lyrics, and also the direct response to the movie The Gambler with Mark Wahlberg. And so it was easier to produce this thing knowing someone was going to have it and buy it, but I didn't have to worry about that because it was made for a very specific audience that has similar thought process than myself.
Right. And you know, I was at a wedding 2 weeks ago, and my cousin Drex surprisingly came over to me, and he said he was just so impressed by your work and what you're doing and the things you're posting on Instagram and Facebook. And we had a little short conversation, and he asked me, why do you do this? Why is he doing this? And I ultimately said, because if he didn't, it would kill him.
I've said this before in vlogs, and I've talked about it extensively. And my dear friend Saul talks about this like from this perspective. It's like a faucet. You know, the faucet has to always be on, and sometimes it's on full blast, and sometimes it's just trickling, but it's always on. And if you turn it off, it builds up, and it eventually will burst the pipe. I think that's how I kind of see it for myself personally. When we as in all my friends that were in art school together, and even in graduate school, you know, it was constantly said that, you know, there was a small amount of you that were going to continue to make and show work and chase that role as an artist, like 1%. When I was going through it, I always kind of dismissed it, like I was always going to make art, you know. But the older I get, and as farther in my career, we're in 20 years now, making work. I think the reason I do continue to make work, and a lot of my peers are not, is because of that faucet. I've constantly got to make something, and that's what I'm passionate about. It's making images, telling stories, whatever that may be. And right now in the studio, it's this. We're at this time where that process is in a completely different stage than it was last year. I'm filling up the bucket of ideas. I mean, and behind me that you can see, and maybe that camera or whatever is that, and you've seen it in other videos that you know, the accumulation of materials that I'm drawing from, because that's like what's going on in my brain right now. So I can't stop doing it. It changes. It changes. There are times when I have to draw, and there are times when I have to write, and there's times when I have to read, and there are times when I have to make music, and there are times when I have to tell stories through video, and there are times when I have to perform. And I don't know the formula for that, but I know that those things kind of happen. And then I have to build and make and build things. So I never can do just one thing. It's because it's constantly this constant flow of ideas and energy, creative energy, that it drives me. It drives me. It's the best way I can say it.
So this goes into the next question. I'm going to put a star by this one right here. A quote that you quoted, I think, one day from Matthew Barney. But, you know, the joke in the Kendall family for years has always been that your father, your dad, Carl
Ray Kendall,
could fix anything but a broken heart. And we just watched him completely take the engine of the Expedition apart, fix head gaskets that I had always heard was impossible to do. Put the whole doggone thing back together again, and that expedition is still running strong.
Also, too, he just rebuilt the transmission in
Yeah.
his old truck so he could continue to drive in it. I mean, completely rebuilt it. I mean, completely rebuilt this transmission, and he was calling me to borrow tools. Can I borrow your drill press? I need to get because he sold his business. So when he sold his business, he lost a lot of the tools, the machining tools. So he was borrowing my things to finish up, and then I spent an afternoon. I think it might have been Thanksgiving or something, or around the time it was cooled off, or he was kind of in the middle of it. And I remember telling you, I was like, if he gets this thing together,
I'd be impressed.
And sure enough, man, that old man got that thing up and running, and
and we saw him in the garage. He's got to be working on something.
Got to be working on
he
something, man. He's got
restoring, remodeling, refinishing, redoing a weed eater right now for your cousin.
Right.
So, I mean, he just can fix anything. But my point is that how much of that ability to take apart and put together and tinker and build and rebuild goes into your work. Having watched him your whole life.
Well, I don't think it's watching. I think it's in our DNA. I think in my DNA. A lot of people don't know this. You may not know this, but when I was a kid, younger than the girls, probably before I started school, definitely before I started school, his dad would make model airplanes. And he did that before I was born, when he was in the Navy, and that was kind of his hobby. I remember him being out in this little tin shed, when I was a kid, and he would build these amazing. I have pictures, so maybe I'll post them and put them in the video of this. But these amazing model airplanes, and then go out in the field on the weekends and crash them and destroy them. And then go back.
Maybe that's where your work comes from.
Maybe,
you like to build and then tear it up.
But he unfortunately, when he found other outlets, he fished a lot as a kid. When I was a kid too, and we spent a lot of time on the lake. But Dad, so I saw that, and I think about myself. I think about myself years ago when we first turned this space into the studio, and I would be out here working, and even last year when I didn't have a job where I was spending 16 hours a day making art. I thought about that a lot, and I think that's just something in our DNA. I mean, my papa, his dad, tinkered and made things in his little shop.
Ray Kendall
until the bitter end, until he couldn't see anymore. So I think it's part of my DNA. I have a verse to contribute, and maybe it's not just a verse, maybe it's a concerto or something. I don't know.
So that kind of goes back to the question I had before. Again, we were having these conversations. We talk a lot. You and I do.
I get talked out a lot, yeah.
That is not a true statement.
Your thing is, I know, your thing's falling, so.
That is not a true statement. There are some Friday nights when I have been talking for 5 straight days to 8-year-olds, and I say nothing, and you talk for 2 hours. So,
because I don't talk to anybody.
Well, there you go. Okay, so anyway, you made a quote, and I think it was from Matthew Barney, that said, "My ability to make work is like a muscle, and I've got to exercise that muscle constantly."
Yeah, his work is the Cremaster series was. That's how he was an athlete too. From what I understand, a gifted football player in high school.
I think you kind of answered that just a few minutes ago. Just that constant need to make work.
Well, I really, his work is that idea of like resistance builds strength, and I'm tied to that idea.
Yeah.
I think, and even more now, the work that I'm making now and what I'm going through with myself, reconciling my identity as an athlete, even as a middle-aged man, that idea of building in a strength base, and then creating situations so you're stronger and stronger and stronger, and then recovering stronger and stronger and stronger, stronger, recover. I think that's how the studio works for me, or my practice works for me.
And I think, as this was not on the questionnaire, but it made me think through this process that going back to those two different types of artists, there are some artists or some people who art is a hobby for them, and they make beautiful things, and they make pretty paintings and jewelry and clothes and things like that. But it is a hobby that they do for fun. But this is almost like a desperation that I see from this side, or a desperate need that you have. It's not that I think if you truly could choose a different path, you would choose an easier path, because this path never has been, nor never will it be easy for you. But it's like it calls you. You can't deny it.
No, I don't. Yeah, I can't. I don't. It's hardwired.
Yeah. So your time in the studio is limited right now because within the year you've been able to go back to working with Heath Edwards from Palmetto Aquatics, which is awesome because he challenges you in a different way that that the other people around you challenge you. So my question to you is then, because you only have a limited time in the studio these days, where does your focus lie when you take those when you have those studio hours?
I don't. I think I'm starting to learn that it's a checks and balances thing. One of the great things about okay, but let me rewind a little bit. Last weekend I was hanging out with Saul Cyber Buhag, shout out, and he said something about, well, art's your hobby, right? And I was like, no, not really. Swimming or being involved in aquatics is my hobby. Mm-hmm. Art is my profession. So yeah, the hobby part is really important because not only is it informing the art now, it also provides a needed distraction from the daily grind of the studio. Meaning that there are days where you want to make things, or you want to do things, or you have a to-do list that, and you have all the time in the world, but you don't feel like doing them. So you have to find ways of being productive by giving yourself a schedule, a routine that you stick to. And although my studio time is somewhat limited now, it's becoming balanced in the sense that I don't have the pressure to produce on the scale that I had last year. And I think this is a good time to talk about this, because last year I couldn't find a job. Heath didn't need me. I couldn't find. I mean, you know as well as I do that I applied for tons of jobs, and I went through that whole thing, and it's forced me to have to be in the studio to do things. And I had this plan, and I had all these things that I wanted to do, and I kind of went into it headlong and worked myself into a frenzy up until the first of the year, and then realized that it doesn't have to be quite as fast as I'm making it. One of the pieces of advice that I would give y'all artists or people that are creative that are making things, it's better just to do it badly at the beginning and do it than not do it at all. And I think last year I was just trying to do it, just make as much as I could and figure it out as I go along. And now, a year past, I have the ability to say, well, this was what was working, this was what not was working, and then kind of create a plan that's uh, much more.
Realistic.
No, well, maybe that's the right word. Fluid, organic.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of trying to force things, I think that you get into trouble when you start forcing yourself into creative situations that aren't necessarily you're ready for.
Yeah.
But
So you kind of touched on this a little bit. I a lot of times when I come home from my own job and to have like 10 minutes before you go off in the studio, there's last year I would come in and there would be just paint and wood and all kinds of stuff outside and inside, and now it's surrounding right here, but there's books and writing and mechanical pencils that because that's what you like to use, and so sticky notes and
lots of sticky
and
notes.
research and so what do all of your projects start like this with that mulling over process?
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking about my epiphany I had last week about slowing down and having a little more patience with the process. Um, the
Camera still on?
Yeah, we're good. The You gotta stop interrupting me. You're changing my train of thought. Yes. In years past, when I was teaching, the summer was spent reading and writing for the work that was made during the year. Because I had a year of just making work and having these shows, it's like starting over right now. And how that works for me is you have these generally very loose, disparate ideas that you're trying to connect to create new work, and it requires a lot of writing and understanding that goes into that. Sketchbooks, reading, the wall of truth behind me, experimentation along the way. Um, so yeah, it starts like that for me always. And then after the writing and the reading goes, then the process like what's right, these loose sketches that'll start happening, like or these images that'll kind of come out, and then it snowballs from there. And what's been great this year is the vlogs. As I'm learning that the vlogs are like a personal studio visit, where I'm forced, or a critique even, like from a academic point of view, when you're sitting in a group of people, or when you're forced to say the words out loud of what you're thinking, and then now that I can record them and go back and listen to them and learn from what I'm saying. Is this working? Is this not working? So back to your original question, yeah, that's how it works. It becomes this absorption process that you absorb as much as you can about the topic you're trying to make work about. And then you try to sift through all that reference material to find your narrative, and then you build from there. The Dorothy Project started with this vague interest in the urban legend of listening to Dark Side of the Moon with The Wizard of Oz, and how if you're on hallucinogenics, it's supposed to line up and all that, which is all bullshit. But it forced me to read Wicked. It forced me to read The Wizard of Oz for the first time. It forced me to do research on the film. It forced me to research Pink Floyd. So I absorbed all these things as much as possible, which eventually formed the Dorothy Project, which was, my own version of The Wizard of Oz based on all that material. And when I say my own version, it had to deal with sports, masculinity, gender roles, all that stuff that formed that project. So yeah, it always starts from this incredible, and I don't take that term lightly, this incredible research period where you take in as much information about the subject matter as you can before you go move forward. And some actors may say that's what they do as well. Some actors know, but I think that method actors or whatever, they try to find their character by doing all this research, and I think I'm trying to find the narrative through a lot of research.
So thinking about all that and having watched the process for 25 years, almost 30 years.
I think you've only really seen it for 20 years. I don't think that I was dialed in until right when we got married. So 20 years.
So
July will be 20.
Yep, it's coming July 2020 will be 20. Yep. So I feel like, and I could be wrong in your thought process, but I've watched your drawings and I'm looking around at the studio. Because of the fact that a lot of this work is here, but it's almost like your work is now beginning to take a turn from the angry, bloody demons, scary, and I'm not saying that you're making rainbows and unicorns by any means, but it doesn't seem so angry. Is this because you finally have found some peace within your own soul? You're finally able to be yourself and not try to be what everybody else wants you to be?
I don't know. I mean, I think I found the peace in myself just because I'm getting older. And I have, that was a season in my life. And also I was drawing from culture, from a past culture.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the culture that we live in today. So it's changed a bit. It's kind of like going from, you don't want to be the bad guy anymore.
Right.
I don't want to be the bad guy anymore. Postmodern thought and, the theories and indoctrination of contemporary art especially has to deal with postmodern theory. And we're not going to get into postmodern theory right here, but, as much
I don't
as...
even know what those words mean, so...
So they... yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
I don't know is an okay answer. I mean, I was thinking...
I'm just not as...
you make what comes to you.
Well, during a lot of that earlier work had to do with this, the book that I read, the Redneck Manifesto, and the blue collar white male and how angry they are for a lot of different reasons. I don't want to go into that too much, but this kind of idea of work hard, play hard. I've come to terms with that with the work. And then football added to that violence too, and that anger. But yeah, I don't. It changes because I'm older. I think having girls and being a dad changed that as well.
And then watching what you're doing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's definitely like the work that's going to make now is like, when we're dealing with the hero's journey, like you're going to deal with the demons and the monsters and the dragons of yourself and these obstacles that the hero has to overcome. And maybe we can get into that too in a little while, but it's much more of a I don't know if the right word is win, but I want to see the character win, not lose. And then again, I'm still pulling for the underdog.
Right.
So
that's why you love the Gamecocks.
You love to hate the Gamecocks, absolutely.
Sure. Yep, you love to hate the Gamecocks. Okay, so where do you get? So before you answer this question, everybody needs to be fed spiritually, emotionally, and I know Friday nights is not enough for you. So where do you go to get fed when you are feeling empty? I think I know the answer, but
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
where do you go to be with like-minded people who get you?
Oh, there's a very few set of friends that I seek out and try to find and
Saul Siebert.
cyber
Siebert, sorry. Meatball.
meatball. Saul, yeah, for sure. Zach,
Why?
His Zach, his brother as well, and Max too. Like anybody from that whole Taps community too is dear to my heart. Um, Larry
Tom.
Henry, Tom, yeah, the guys at the cigar shop for sure.
And why? Why those people?
Because I think they're like-minded souls. They're on the same journey I am, and they're acknowledging it, and they're trying to get to the bottom of something. And I don't know. I like using this term, and I say it a lot, but and Saul says it a lot, but this idea of cursed with clarity. I see how unreal everything is. Like everything is so fake. Like anything you're consuming is not real. Any idea that you're consuming is not real. You have to seek out the truth for yourself. And if you're just taking anything for face value, then it's not. It's not.
It's almost
not
like
feeding you in a way you need to be fed. It's like eating junk food all the time.
right.
So sooner or later you want a home cooked meal, and a home cooked meal never compares to the Denny's Denny's Thanksgiving never compares to your mom's Thanksgiving.
Right.
It's that kind of thing. It's like it's.
They don't ever let you be proud or pompous. They're constantly jabbing at you to make you better, and jabbing in a way that's fun. But I mean, I think about Tom all the time when you go. Like he, as the term you use, he busts your balls all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
But it makes you better. It makes you stronger. You welcome that. You welcome those challenges.
Yeah, I do. And when back to our first point is like that's what I seek out is this challenge. Like if I'm not on my toes, then I'm not doing the work, and I shouldn't be there if I'm not on my toes. I shouldn't be there if I'm not doing the work. Michaela Pilar Brown is another great example of someone who inspires me. And our podcast with her last year and her story that she told about being in a critique and and someone who had a group of people that worked really incredibly hard for a critique, and then somebody shows up with something that's it's just bullshit. And that's one of the things I've been back to the idea of curse with clarity. I think curse with clarity is you have this bullshit meter that's set on high all the time, and you can smell it a mile away. It's not, and I think music is one of those genres that are easier to smell it than maybe other ones are.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because my filter is high, and I know my friends and people that are their filter is even higher than mine with unauthentic music, and so yeah, I think that's you smell it out and you look for that authentic creation somehow, some way, and when it's real and it's not real. And what happens in society and media is that you have these people that are making these authentic things, and then they try to capitalize on that. Many podcasts and lectures I've listened to in the last year and a half is dealing with that idea of artists produce things that are true artists are producing things that are authentic, and then you have the machine that takes them and appropriates them and uses them to make money.
So you kind of answered my next question because I tell you all the time, you are probably one of the most difficult people that has ever walked on this earth.
I don't try to be.
and you're exhausting, and your brain works nonstop, and your expectations of humans and people and society are just so high that you're disappointed on a daily basis. And it kind of answers that question because there are very few people that you highly respect. And I guess it's because you can smell the BS. We go into galleries all the time and you're like, no, no. Yeah, I'm like, I love that. No. So what is it about an artist or musician that makes you stop and pause when you see it? Like, you think Michaela Pilar Brown's work is amazing. Saul's music is just super awesome. And so what is it about them? I did. I gave you 3 minutes.
That first of all, that's a great question. I think about that better the way. I'm going to tell you a story real quick. So when I was in art school, I went to New York to see the Sensations show, and this might have been the same time I saw a, a painting show by Jenny Saville, who's a British artist who just makes amazing work. I mean, it made me not paint because I couldn't paint like that. Like, to get to that level is like it's all you do, and I was much more interested in other things. And then also, like, as I read this book, Flow, and some of the things that they were talking about, the idea of flow through seeing. It's like understanding the importance of seeing things. And then when I teach, or when I would teach art, art is the skill or the ability to see. Drawing is the ability to see. So I have the ability to see, and I can see what it takes to make something, and then at the same time, I have the ability to see through it. So it hits you in the gut. Good things that are good or whatever hit you in a place that's sublime or spiritual, or in a religious experience even. Like, that's what I'm looking for, is this religious experience. The hair on the back of your neck stands up when you experience someone else's work.
But what is it about it that you don't know?
I
You
tell
can't explain it.
I mean, if you can tell me, like, you pull up specific pieces, I can tell you. Like, back to the Jenny Saville, like her paintbrush strokes. I mean, obviously she used like a 5-inch wide brush from you get from Home Depot to paint with. That's not this brush thing. So it's completely breaking tradition and breaking the norm. Yeah, breaking the norm, breaking from the norm. I'm looking for that. I'm looking for something that's unexpected, that makes me feel, that affects me physically, that creates an experience for me, whether it's 2-dimensionally, 3-dimensionally, or 4-dimensionally, 5-dimensionally.
Well, the world is 5-dimensional.
So you have 3-dimensional, so you walk around something. You have 4th-dimensional, you're adding sound or smell to that, and then the 5th is you're having to interact. You're forced to move within it. So it's like
Gotcha.
It's like an athletic thing.
Right. So. Okay, now I wish I had some pieces to look up, and I was trying to think about, like, the show that you did with Michaela. Was that last August? Was that before?
Yeah, that was
right before the piece, right? You guys, and it was really funny, is that the irony of the two of you, because you both love each other so much, and y'all are complete opposites.
Well, I don't think so.
Physically.
Physically, yes.
Physically.
Yeah, she's a short, voluptuous black lady who doesn't have any hair. That's a whole other story. You should watch our podcast with that. And then and that's a choice for her breaking from the norm and being different. So,
and that's what you love about her, because she will put that out there and make people feel uncomfortable, and she wants that.
Well, she's very much like in our podcast. One of the great quotes from that, the sound bites, I think you can find on my Instagram account, is she's like, I want to draw you in and then punch you in the mouth. I think that's a great way.
Yeah.
And I think she can get away with that statement better than I can get away with that.
Right.
But that's exactly right. It's like it's like I said, walking into a crime scene and all of a sudden, bam, you're in a crime scene. Oh crap, there's a dead body on the ground. Why is there a dead body on the ground? Oh crap, there's this thing over there. Da, da, da. So you're immediately forced to try to solve the puzzle, and it puts you in an uncomfortable situation. I'm looking for that uncomfortable situation by other art. Film is a great example of that. You and I differ on movies we like, and I like to be left hanging. I like to be left with all these unanswered questions and be forced to deal with those questions on my own. And that's what I look for in art, and that's how I seek out things that affect me and inspire me. And back to the art of Matthew Barney and more specifically Paul McCarthy. The first time I saw his work in the real, and this was before internet, you could just Google anything and see anything that Paul McCarthy had ever made. Like having to go to New York and see the stuff, and you walk in and you first of all, it's this amazing installation of this performance space, but it reeks of rotten condiments.
Right.
And you're like, what the hell is going on? And so that affected me, that this visceral, just the smell puts you in a completely different place.
Right.
It was almost like you were like, there's a dead body somewhere because it smelled so bad.
And as you're talking about this, I look at the Wall of Truth, and sometimes when I first walk in and I see new images, and I think, it scares me that you're my husband, because I'm like, this is just creepy. But do you don't really look at this stuff from a creepy versus non-creepy. You look at it from how they made this and how they had the guts to put it out there. And no, yes,
it's creepy, sure, but I like it because of that reason. The only thing that's on the Wall of the Truth, that a little tidbit of a little side story. There's a picture of an 80s, 70s toy, 70s, called Hugo, and it was this bald character that it's kind of like a hand puppet that you would decorate and whatever. And at my grandmother's house, my mom's mom, as a kid, I was terrified of this thing. I would freak out, really run out the house, screaming down the street, freak out.
Shout out to the original Lucille.
Yeah. So, and then embracing that feeling, I can't say that I wouldn't mind someone doing that with my art.
Mm.
That's the kind of experience. So that image is there as this something that absolutely repulsed me as a child, that now as an adult I can embrace as inspiration. It's really kind of it's like whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. This idea of that, and then some of the other things, like you're talking about horror movies, like on the Wall. There's American Werewolf in London. I didn't get the chance to watch that movie as a kid because when it came out on HBO, we had HBO. My parents obviously wouldn't let me watch it, but I got to watch the Stan Winston behind the scenes, how they did the special effects of that stuff before I even got to see the movie. So that is another part of the process of what I do. Is this? It's very much like any movie that's made where there's these behind the scenes stuff. It's like that. I'm interested in the process of creating the images and the objects and the narrative, and I mean, I'm as interested in that process as I am in the final work. It's as so the images are like these behind the scenes of movies,
Right.
or the drawings that the conceptual artist made for the movies. Um, like there's a picture of from Empire Strikes Back where Mark Hamill and the guy that played I don't think it was David Prowse when they were doing the stunts. Anyway, they're standing there with these sticks. It's not the lightsabers, but it's the lightsabers. But they're just standing there because they're tired and they're filming. It was just a black and white photo that's in itself a powerful image without knowing anything about Star Wars.
Right.
So those are things I seek out, and sometimes the most uncomfortable images are the most powerful ones.
Is that why you loved being in art school so much? Because you had people like that would just challenge you and bring stuff, and
I don't know. I mean,
you lived with in the compound. That group of guys.
Well, that's a different thing. Art school and that is different. What happened with me at undergraduate school at Ringling, when I got a chance to live with Landon, Sterling, and Ashley, was this as close to the camaraderie that I felt on a football team that I had since playing on a football team, but in the sense of art and academia. I mean, these are guys that were well-read, super cultured, that sought out the same kind of life experiences that I sought out.
Right.
And there was no wiggle room, and there was no slack giving you for your own ideas. You had to be willing to back those up. And there, and then in art school, with those same guys, we brought that same kind of intensity into critiques and the experience that we had. And sometimes we came out on top, and sometimes we didn't. But we were always willing to put ourselves on the line. And then in graduate school, when I was at NYU, I was lucky enough to have Beverly Sims that had that obstructions class. That a group of us there was nothing we ever did was ever going to be good enough. And accepting that fact and knowing that no matter how successful your work would have been or was, the next time you had to push yourself further. And I think that has to do with like how I relate to being an athlete. It's the exact same process. You're only as good as your last game or your last race or whatever. So right now I'm starting over. It's like retraining for the season again.
Is that what Roxy tells you? I look at that picture and I think often that as you sit in that space, she's looking at you and she's shaking her head and she's saying it's not good enough. Keep trying.
Roxy was one of those people in my life that she was as much as of a coach for me than I had ever had on the football field. And she used to say things like, as long as you kick ass or something along those lines, like it has to be kick ass. She was one of those people that would not accept mediocrity. She would not accept it. And as I left Ringling and kept in touch with her, she did not accept mediocrity for herself either. She didn't come to art academia until after having kids and going through a divorce, and her kids were grown by the time I met her, and she'd only been in art academia for a few years, and she had accepted the call to adventure, and she was riding that wave, and she was doing it. she was falling forward and failing and figuring it out. And at the time, man, we gave her all kinds of hell for what we saw as her mediocrity. But it wasn't mediocrity. She was doing it badly to get better. Before she died, I had an opportunity to stay with her. I was a visiting artist at Ringling and got a chance to spend a week down there with the kids and having her share her studio practice with me and share the work that she was making. And she was making these sculptures out of bras. And they were gorgeous, man. She was sewing them and cutting them apart and making these dress-like images and these things that were like figures, and they were amazing. Amazing. And she was, the first time that I could see it in her eyes and see it physically, that she was finally getting to a place that she was getting to the place she was seeking out. It was so inspiring. So inspiring.
Is that what you keep her right there? Is it a conscious place?
I miss her. But she's here.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to ask the next question?
No, just give me a second. I miss her. She's still here. She's one of the few people that were willing to take my challenge of being a difficult person. She would tell me I was full of shit when I knew I was full of shit. No one else did. She knew how to push those buttons, and she would make me feel like shit, man. When I thought I had it figured out, she would make me realize that no, I did not have it figured out, and there was a long way from that figuring out. But also too, she empathized with my frustration when I did figure it out. And I presented it to everybody else, and they were far behind me.
Mm.
And she would kind of like pat me on the back and say, just relax.
Mm-hmm.
Some people aren't there yet.
So. That's what I do to you on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes.
It's going to be okay. Yeah, sometimes. And then sometimes you do it to me. I guess that's why we do. I was thinking about what you said before. You have that BS meter. And I am the complete opposite. I know your name, and I think you're my new best friend. So I guess that's why we complement each other well, because you reel me in, and I encourage you to spread out a little bit. Trust a little bit.
Trust.
So, we talked a lot last time about music and how it plays a huge role, not only in just your art, but in your life. I saw something last night, you probably have already answered this, but you went from growing up watching your mom listen to music while she cleans in the morning. On Saturday morning she played the organ. Your daddy listens to music. I got the privilege of one day he picked me up from school. I honestly can't remember why, but I got in the car and he was singing to the cathedrals, and he tried to turn it off and I wouldn't let him. And he sang all the way home. But last night we were watching the trailer for Amazing Grace, Aretha Franklin. And I giggled because I thought, she has no idea that a 44-year-old Southern boy from Columbia, South Carolina is her biggest fan.
Well, I don't know the biggest fan. We talked about that last night. Like, I am far from, I'm a giant Aretha fan, but I'm not her biggest fan. I think these musicians that have carried her torch on are her biggest fans. I haven't had that luxury.
So why her?
Oh man, it's back to that thing we talked about. It's real. It makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. She starts singing, and it's like, whew, like it brings you to this other place. You know what I mean? It's yeah.
A religious
It's
experience.
a religious, and not just saying because she's singing hymns or she's from the church or anything like that. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's part of that. Maybe that's why I love Saul and his music and Zach's and these guys that are making this music, because it's steeped in this kind of religious background. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know.
Because you really are a spiritual person.
I am. I know that in my vlogs I've been harping on this idea of flow, and this new vlog that's going to come out next week is great insight into what that means for me. Is when you have would be considered a religious experience, it changes your genetic makeup, and you seek that out. You want to feel that ecstasy again. You want to feel like you're one with the universe, or however you want to say it. And you want to figure out, if you're alive and you're alive, you want to find out why you feel that way in that situation.
Right.
And I seek it out. And so back to the Aretha Franklin is I could listen to her sing The Weight every day, 4 and 5 times a day, and it's still going to make me feel.
Doesn't she sing His Eyes on the Sparrow? There's one that I can just hear in my head. I can't think of.
Well, the thing, Amazing Grace, when you're talking about that, it's like a 9-minute long Amazing Grace. And I didn't know this until last night, but apparently she stands at the freaking pulpit and sings it to a microphone. Her hands on a pulpit, she sings this thing. But on that album, she sings "God Will Take Care of You."
That's the one.
And that's the one. I mean, that is. Maybe we'll overdub that into this too. Maybe we'll get in trouble for it. But yeah, man, that's.
If we give her all the credit, how can we?
Well, it's not just her. I mean, we can go through a lot of stuff. I mean, it's not just her. I mean, that's one of the things that drew me to Saul and Buhag is, that music made me feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
You mean Jonah, specifically. Jonah and Snakebite, from them. And of course, the whole album of The Further was, they just ran in the studio for, months over and over again, 30 minutes at a time. And just the album was only 30 minutes long, and just over and over and over again. That made me feel that way. It made me, every time I heard it, and Saul would howl, or Scott would play that particular riff, it would make me, I would get that feeling of that hair on the back of my neck standing up, and it inspires you to chase something you hadn't discovered yet.
Right. So, when we started this adventure just a year ago, you wrote down and you set a list of goals, 5-year goals, and you've actually accomplished all of them.
Not all of them, but a lot of them.
So what's next? You've talked about the hero's journey. You've talked about the athlete and the idea of flow.
That's next. I mean, I haven't talked about it.
To me, you've talked about it.
To you, yeah, but not on the podcast now.
Right.
That's next. I have. I'm just starting to understand the structure that I'm dealing with that work. The hero's journey breaks down like this. If I can try to explain it as quickly as I possibly can, is you have the hero who's stuck in the ordinary world, which I was, and then you have this call to adventure. And in all stories, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. I mean, in any story. I mean, Charlotte's Web, for Christ's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Wizard of Oz. I mean, name it. This is Joseph Campbell. His genius of Joseph Campbell was like, so the hero is going to resist or refuse that call initially. And so the call, the resist, and then goes back. The call, the resist, or refusal, call and refusal, until some kind of supernatural intervention happens that forces the hero to accept the call to adventure. And then the hero has to cross the threshold into this world. And there's something there or someone there that they have to defeat. They're the guardian of the threshold. And you challenge this guardian and you lose the first time. And so you have to seek out the mentor, this old crotchety man or something that has been there. And that man, that's Merlin and the King Arthur story, gives you some kind of supernatural aid or provides you with some kind of supernatural skill or perspective. So you go back to that guardian threshold and you defeat that guardian, that first guardian. And then there's many, 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 many guardians of many different thresholds until the final threshold where it's like the boss of a video game or whatever. And you challenge that boss or they call it the dragon. It's like the dragon it's like the Hobbit. Like Bilbo Baggins had to challenge Smaug by like outsmarting him or whatever. And then that's the biggest thing. And then what happens during that battle or whatever, that the hero is at the moment of losing the battle, and then they get saved from rescue from without. So you're without any you have no defense. You're going to lose, and it's obvious you're going to lose. And then out of nowhere, something comes and saves you. In Star Wars, it was right before Luke Skywalker dropped the torpedoes into the Death Star. Darth Vader was about to shoot him down, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Han Solo comes in and shoots out Darth Vader, and he's saved. He's cleared. He goes and shoots it and blows up the thing. And the Hobbit, it's when the guy from the lake town shoots the arrow into the dragon's belly that finds a little chink in armor, kills him. This rescues. So Bilbo's a hero. The rescue from without. And Wizard of Oz is when accidentally Dorothy goes to help her friend that's on fire, and instead misses her friend and hits the witch. So the bucket of water rescues her from without. And so they have that moment where you're rescued from without, and then they become the hero. And then the hero has to go back to the ordinary world. Mm-hmm. And when the hero goes back to the ordinary world, like in all the stuff, we'll get that in a minute, and tells their story, no one understands that story. This is an abstract, crazy thing having this. There's no way that this could happen.
Right.
I mean, Dorothy wakes up from her dream in the movie. That doesn't happen in the book, but it tells the story. I had this incredible dream. Nobody believes it.
Right.
When Bilbo goes back to the Shire, no one believes his story. So the hero becomes that old hermit that the next hero will seek out.
Yoda.
That's exactly right. He's exactly right. Yeah. It'll be it's the next mentor. You become the mentor. Mm-hmm. And I think that, and as I become older in my life, is that I'm starting to realize that I am, with the coming years, that I'm slowly becoming the mentor, telling these crazy stories of success. Mm-hmm. No one would believe.
Right.
So yeah, that's the work that I'm making now. is dealing with that story structure I just told you about, the hero's journey. And what I've learned is this idea of flow from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the doctor, that if you break it down in stages, it mirrors the hero's journey perfectly. It's call to adventure, resistance, and then you find flow in that challenge, and then you start over again. This is very cyclical.
I think about that as being a teacher. You go into your classroom and you have this magical experience and this flow experience with your kids in a lesson. And then you go back to the workroom and you try to share that. And they're like, that can't happen.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. So the work and what I'm going through right now. And then also, too, like on the flip, on the third part of that, we haven't talked about this very much. Triathlon, our endurance sports, and that training and racing and all that, it mirrors those two structures perfectly as well. So trying to marry them into a cohesive body of work, which I don't know anybody that's done that.
Right.
As one of my challenges, and all these marketing strategies that I see in YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and whatever, to find your niche. My niche and what I'm doing here, what I'm doing, is so small and very specific that it's a unique place to be, and I don't think I'd rather be any place that I'm at right now. And there's definitely so right now, if you guys are fans of endurance sport, the World Championship Ironman is going on right now. I've been listening to it all morning, but
that's why you like triathlons, because it is a challenge. It's not easy. I would never do. I like easy things.
I don't.
I know.
So yeah, that's the work. Like trying to marry these things together right now, and that's what's next. Is the vlogs that I'm making, these short videos. I'm recording some of the footage from my training, and try to turning it, and then all the stuff that's behind me, turning it into sculptures, drawings, is where we're headed. Like I kind of I gave myself some grace last week, and you and I have talked privately about this. Is the Dorothy Project took 5 years. We are in beginning of year two, a month into year 2. So slow down and figure it out. You've got time, and that's where I'm at. And also, too, as an artist, like we're trying to find outlets and exhibitions and all that. It's like I'm just not willing to sacrifice my family time for those experiences right now. Like my girls are important, and you know that.
Well, because we're only blessed with a certain amount of years.
Sure, yeah, we're at year 10, so.
And we're gonna blink, and they're gonna be gone, and it's gonna be us, and we will have all the time in the world to be adventurous and figure things out. So,
I've only got 3 years, so when they turn 13, it's over.
I don't know. So when people say, "Well, where is he? Where's the next show? Where's the next this? What's happening?" I'm making memories with my kids right now.
It'll happen. I mean,
it will happen, but it won't happen as fast as some of your fans want it to happen because of that.
Maybe, and it's okay.
Right, it is okay.
It is okay.
And that's why you chose to give yourself that grace last week to slow down, because you know as well as I do, you really are being a mentor right now to twin 10-year-old girls, because they don't get that creative process from me.
Yeah, they do, but you don't. Well, we could argue about this on end, but it's just different. Yeah,
they're two very complex little girls who get the BS meter. Lucy has the BS meter.
Yeah, she does. Yeah.
Leola has the I know your name, you're my best friend.
Well, and then but then she realizes after the fact that she was wrong, and her filter gets turned to higher, and clicked up.
But then in the opposite realm, Lucy likes that structure and that list. She likes to put puzzles together, and Leola does not like the boundaries of a puzzle and a list. She just wants you to let her
she'll
go.
learn that. I think she'll learn that. I think I love puzzles, but I just have to have time to do it. I have to have nothing else going on.
Or a wife who won't do it in 24 hours.
No, you just don't start from the middle and work out. You work from the outside in. I like to work from the middle out.
Okay, so I did this the last time, and honestly, I don't remember what I did yesterday, much less what I did a year ago. And your outlook may have changed. So I'm going to give you some names, and I want you to say the first word or the first phrase that comes to mind.
Well, if I remember correctly, we ended up with me crying. We've already talked about Roxy, so please try to be a little more sensitive to my crying abilities.
Yeah, okay. Whatever. Lucy Kendall.
Oh, man, that's a tough one.
Boss lady.
Captain. She's definitely the captain. She's got it figured out, man. Yeah, captain.
Leola Kendall.
Karma. It's my karma.
Doris Ann.
Mom.
Carl Ray.
Stubborn.
Buddy Joe.
He's good.
For those of you that may not know who Buddy Joe is, that's his brother.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. I don't give him enough credit for being as good as he is at what he does and who he is. So yeah.
Was that the name that's tearing you up?
No.
Landon Wiggs.
Oh wow, that's we didn't talk about too much of him. Landon. He's free. Landon's free.
Mm-hmm.
He's free. He's one of those free individuals.
Yep.
So yeah.
Saul Seibert.
So. You're my best friend.
Michaela.
My twin.
Ray Kendall.
The blueprint.
Yeah,
Blueprint.
that's for sure.
The blueprint in a way that's not, that people don't understand that blueprint. Like, he's kind of like,
I get that. Only Kendalls get that.
he saw the world, he saw the kind of person he wanted to be and saw the world that he wanted to create. He just was never able to do that. Never reached that thing. And then, of course, my dad took the next step, and then me and Ryan take the next step after that. So, yeah. That was easier said than done.
Yeah. So here's another set of questions, kind of like I did. You know, we used to binge watch Inside the Actors Studio.
Okay.
And I loved that show.
Yeah, it's still great.
Yeah. And so what's your favorite food?
Ooh, that's a tough one, man. Food. Because in the last year especially, I've come to terms with my mouth pleasures. You know what I'm saying? So, and how what I like to, because I think last night I ate like 5 Reese's cups or something. So, which is rare for me. Like these days, I'm very super strict about what I put in my body. Favorite food, man, that's a tough one. Now you're asking. You'd have to ask.
What would be your last meal if you're on death row?
That's easy. That's an easy answer. That's mom's roast and brown rice and cheese potatoes. That's
Right.
easy. That's an easy one. I take that all day long.
What's your favorite sport?
Triathlon.
What's your favorite phrase or saying?
I like, and this back to being friends with Saul, falling forward and curse with clarity. But at the same time, you got to remember that it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Rosie Medina.
Yeah. So yeah.
Or don't be a Crybaby pee pants.
Don't be a
The
crybaby.
ding dong hurt.
Don't be a crybaby don't be a crybaby pee pants acting like your ding dong hurt crying to your mama. That's a great one. That's one of my favorites for sure.
This is going to be a hard one. What's your favorite movie line?
Oh, that's a tough one. Man. That's a tough one, man. I could probably rattle off at least 12 of those.
Because you do it on a daily basis.
Yeah, I live by that stuff. It's like
Ezekiel 29.
25:17. That was one of the ones.
That's not even a Bible verse.
The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities, the tyranny, and evil men. Yeah, so I don't know. That's a tough one.
You probably quote Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction
and The Big Lebowski.
The Big Lebowski and Pulp Fiction. A lot. Reservoir Dogs too. I'm hungry. Let's get a taco.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of tonight.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that we're doing this and we're having tacos tonight, and then we had Saul's thing. We're having tacos too.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, that's the one. Those are the ones. I got it.
Hence the reason why our cats are named after movie characters, I guess.
Yeah. So we have Max Fisher from Rushmore, and then Walter Sobchak. And you have to ask me, why are you such an asshole?
Well, there you go. That's why you named him that. That's why he's such a butthole, the cat. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I'd like to be a professional musician. I think, whatever that means. Like I have, trust me, like I have dear friends who are professional musicians. Saul and Zach and the Run Out, Jeff Gregory, Mustache Brothers, everybody from Easy Shakes. Like I see these guys that are doing this professionally. Like I know.
What was the girl, the podcast that she's a singer out of Atlanta?
Noelle Shuck from She
Noelle.
He. Like those guys that are doing, they're chasing a dream like I'm chasing a dream now. I think that if there was any other trajectory I could choose, is I could play guitar.
I thought you would have said cowboy.
No, if I had to, like I like that. I like that. I mean, after us watching Yellowstone,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like the horseman, being a horseman. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sure. But you're asking me like now, like I'd be a
Mm-hmm.
musician. I wish I could sing better. At least I'm not tone deaf.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what profession other than teaching, would you never want to attempt?
military.
Mm.
Never wanted to be in the military. That is not cut that cloth.
Yeah, me either.
So yeah.
What turned you on?
Flesh, feminine flesh,
What turned you off?
negativity, and the meaning that you can't do something.
We'd have to go back to the old podcast and see if you said the same thing.
Did you ask them?
I asked those questions. So rather than saying if God exists or because I know God exists, what would you want him to say? Because you answered that question the last time.
Well, you and I we've had conversations about Jordan Peterson. I try to live as if God exists.
Right.
Saying that I believe that God exists would mean I would live my life completely different. And I can't live to that standard if I truly believe it. And I don't think anybody else can. So to say that you believe in God, you're lying. And so you would try to say that you live life as if you do, if God exists. Not that I believe that. I try to live my life as if God exists. That's what I try to do.
So here's the question. So I'm taking a turn of, our school's a leadership school. On your 80th birthday, when we're all standing around watching you blow out your candles.
Can we do 90?
On your 90th birthday.
Yeah.
What do you want your little girls to say about you?
I knew it. I knew it.
All right, so we have to do it again this way.
You're
that's a
crying
wrap.
now. You're crying now. That's all you got? That's
That's all
it?
I've got. You know, I think the hardest part for me is because I am not a true artist, and in the sense of the word, I'm not complicated. I am the complete opposite of you. So a lot of times the questions can only come after I watch the process.
Yeah, and also too now, like I think you're privy to a point in time that generally happens privately, but because I'm not working, you get to come in and kind of see little bits at a time. I remember you came in a month ago or something. She said, "What happened today at Kendall Projects? All of a sudden, I got this table out now. You got these notes.
Right.
What happened today?" Well, it happens. You get to the point where it's time to start making things, and we're slowly getting to that point where it's time to start making things again. As slow as it is,
But sometimes slow is better.
I think.
Remember,
it is.
the turtle's the one that ran
No, I agree.
won the race.
I agree. We talked about this briefly earlier. When we started the last year, there was a certain urgency to get everything done and accomplish as much as possible. But thinking that I was running a sprint and I'm running a marathon.
Right.
And then now I'm like, okay, kind of settle into my pace, and I'm settling into my pace. And that's where I'm at. I'm just kind of settling in. A lot of things have happened in the last few weeks that will determine the rest of the year. My job at Paramount Aquatics is one, which is a perfect distraction for me. I think back to before I went to graduate school at NYU, and how kind of that my existence as a aquatics director and swim coach and manager of people, and then what I was doing athletically, training for triathlon and getting myself together. I think back to that now. I feel like I'm in a very similar position where I'm willing to do these weekly routines and live for Friday, or live for the race, or whatever, and whatever happens. I'm much more comfortable in that mindset, and whatever I accomplish on a week is what I accomplish on the week. Don't, as Jordan Peterson said, he said, set a damn routine and stick to it, but don't let it be but don't be a slave to it.
Mm.
And I think that's something I try to live by. I set a routine. I get up every morning
And make my breakfast first.
No, I
Be jealous.
I drink my coffee first and try to not allow you to talk at me for 30 minutes.
I do pretty good.
You do pretty good, but you're usually up before me, so.
But you should say thank you, because I only tell you 10% of what is truly going on in my brain.
Well, I only tell you 2% what's going on in my brain, so there you go. You win, Faith, you win.
I know, you always say that. I was going to ask you one more question. Oh, no, it was just a statement that, and this time a year ago, we didn't know, financially, we didn't know what was going to happen, and it was a complete, absolute leap of faith. And truly, for me, leap of faith in God, and we're in a better place right now. And then just Palmetto Aquatics, I feel like you have an enormous amount of people who challenge you, and Heath Edwards challenges you as a human and as a man to be a better human and a softer human.
Yeah, he's a special person. I forgot him. I shouldn't have ever have. Working with him again has been a blessing. He's having someone that truly believes in you and your abilities is something. Oh man, our kids and professionals, like that's people. You need that.
I have that.
Well, not everybody does.
Right.
Not everybody does.
I know not many people from my community will listen to this, so I can share this. But Janine Tucker is my Heath Edwards. She has the ability to,
and I appreciate her support for me because she's gone to a ton of my events and shows and openings and all that. So I definitely appreciate her support as well.
yeah, she's a very genuine human being. And then artistically, you've got a group of people that challenge you artistically. And then, I think back on our Friday night, we watched that comedian the other night, and he said his wife is like the only thing she has on me is who I am as a human.
As a human being, that's right. I crush everything.
I crush everything, but that's all she's got on me, and that's how I feel about you. But that's also why I love about you, I say to people sometimes, he really is an a-hole, but I love him. He works hard not to be every day. But it's not that you try. You cannot be fake.
All right.
All right.
Shaking my hand.
Yeah. Love you.